In a day dominated by the defense, these New Orleans Saints quarterbacks are going to have to learn how to forget quickly. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, Kellen Moore gets a lot of work done in only a little bit of time. Quincy Riley stands out early as the young rookie fights for a starting role. And speaking of fighting for a starting role, these quarterbacks are learning very quickly how to manage adversity in a day dominated by the defense. We got all that coming up for you on today's show. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is the proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. These New Orleans Saints quarterbacks, Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shough, Jake Haener, are quickly learning that they're going to need to learn how to continue to manage some adversity in order to win this starting role, especially when the defense is playing hot. And that's exactly what happened here on Thursday's practice. The New Orleans Saints kind of focusing a little bit more on a little bit of drive starter work, but then a lot of red zone work, starting with 7-on-7s and then going into 2 of the 3 series of team drills. A lot of work getting done here. We'll be breaking that down here in a little bit, but these young quarterbacks showing moments where they impress, showing moments where they need to forget, and showing moments where they have forgotten. And that's going to be a little bit of the theme over the course of training camp here throughout this day. I thought that Jake Haener was the strongest and most consistent quarterback of the 3 today, but he was still running with the third team. Meanwhile, Tyler Shough was up against and with the first team and Spencer Rattler, and he had swapped from, to the second team. And so I think that what we saw from these quarterbacks throughout the day today on Thursday really gave us a little bit of an indication of what's going to be expected from them here all throughout campus. Things continue to ramp up. We saw the 2 shortest days in both of these 2 practices on Wednesday and Thursday. Now things need to continue to move ahead as these days get longer and longer, and more work and more demanding is going to be done of these young QBs. So let's break down each of their days. We'll start off with the guy that got first team reps today, Tyler Shough. Tyler Shough was out there and had a really good connection with Rashid Shaheed in particular. You can see some of that offseason work between those two really kind of coming in handy. The 2 of them really having some good chemistry with one another. Tyler Shough threw 2 touchdowns to Rashid Shaheed, both of which in kind of red zone situations, so within 20 yards from the line of scrimmage type stuff. He went a total of 6 of 10 on the day, but he also had, and I think context is really important. You probably heard Lance and all of us talking about that in yesterday's last night's squad show as well. If you haven't heard that, you can go and check that out. But context is really important. Tyler Shough was 6 of 10, but 2 of his incompletions were throwaways, one of which he dirted safely at the feet of Alvin Kamara in the short area of the field, another one on a scramble that he threw out of the back of the end zone. And so, look, Tyler Shough had 31 throwaways during his season last year at Louisville. It was the second most in college football. That's not necessarily a bad metric. One of the things that he talked about, and I thought that he gave really good insight on this, is the idea that sometimes you just kind of have to throw the football away. He said it's either now or later. He had that emphasized as something that Scott Tolzien, the Saints quarterback coach, has been talking to him about. You can either make the play now in rhythm, or you scramble and try to look for what they call the second action play. And then other times you just throw it away. He said that a lot of times you're trying to limit those negative plays or make the big one a throwaway sometimes limits negative plays. So context is really, really important here that, 6 of 10, but also 2 of those incompletions were throwaways. But both of his touchdowns came in red zone situations, which is a good place that you want to see. And he and Rashid Shaheed already starting to click quite a bit. Spencer Rattler moved to the second team on Thursday. He also completed 6 passes, 6 of his 11 passes, but did throw an interception on the day. He was trying to throw one pass away, but said that he didn't get enough under it. And that gave Quincy Riley, who we'll highlight here in a little bit, an opportunity to go up and make a play on the football, doing what it is that he does, which is taking the football away. Spencer Rattler then, right after that play, responded by rushing in for a touchdown. Now, if this were 7-on-7s, I probably wouldn't make a big deal out of rushing in for a touchdown. There's no offensive line. There's no defensive line. As far as I'm concerned, a rushing attempt on 7-on-7s is an incompletion. But when you're doing these team drills and you have, as Kellen Moore put it, the parting of the Red Sea in front of you, the way that the offensive line and defensive line kind of reacted on that play, and you're 3 yards, 5 yards from the end zone, yeah, go run that bad boy in. And so it was great to see Spencer Rattler immediately respond to that. Remember, Kellen Moore talked about this before training camp, during his pre-training camp presser, where he said that everything that he's looking for from these quarterbacks comes down to not what they do wrong, but what they do next. A quality and a tenet that we talk about on this show constantly and all the time. That players are going to go out there and throw interceptions. Quarterbacks are going to go out there and throw interceptions. They're going to turn the ball over. They're going to have bad snaps. They're going to have bad throws. But what did they do next? And that's where I think you saw immediately a response when it came to Spencer Rattler throwing the interception and then going out there and then rushing in for the touchdown. I think both of these quarterbacks, Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shough, continue to show good things and continue to bounce back from things that don't necessarily go their way. For instance, Tyler Shough, after throwing passes away, was also finding his receivers and throwing touchdowns on the day. Spencer Rattler throws an interception and then takes the matter into his own hands, or matter of his own legs, rather, and then runs in for a touchdown. I think that's exactly the kind of balance you want to see. And then at the same time, over with the third team, Jake Haener, who, like I said, had the more consistent day, was still only 3 of 6 on the day. Didn't get a lot of passing opportunities. I think there was a point to where the Saints had run 7-on-7s. They go in and then they ran a second sort of team drill set. And then the very next reps were Shough and Rattler only. And Haener didn't go out there for that third sort of set of team drills. And so consistency also comes with opportunity. But look, 3 of 6 and a touchdown, and probably looked the most decisive. He had a great pass to Juwan Johnson, headed towards the sideline, put the ball where it needed to be there. This was during 7-on-7s, and Juwan Johnson making a toe-tapping grab. And yeah, Juwan Johnson's working with the second team. Trayton Welch is working with the first team. We saw Kendre Miller with the first team today. Meanwhile, Chris Olave is doing second team reps. I mean, these guys are kind of all over the place. And speaking of Chris Olave, we talked about the connection between Shough and Rashid Shaheed. Spencer Rattler targeted Chris Olave 3 times during the day, completing 2 of those passes, one of which was a target towards the end zone where Chris kind of slipped coming out of the break. And then there was also a jet sweep that Rattler handed off to Chris Olave. So you can see a little bit of the chemistry being built with both of these quarterbacks that are competing for the starting job and the 2 top wide receivers. So I think the thing that I mean to highlight with all of this is exactly what I said at the very beginning. The defense really stood out here. In these red zone drills. And remember, context matters in these situations, in these red zone drills. But these quarterbacks are now being tasked very quickly to continue to do what it is that made them so appealing to Kellen Moore in the first place, the New Orleans Saints head coach, which is managing the adversity. So looking forward to day 3 to see exactly who gets first team, who gets second team, who gets third team, what that all continues to look like. But for right now, I want to turn things over to the defensive side. They were the stars of the show after all. And Quincy Riley might be the one that shined the brightest. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Have you ever been trying to buy last-minute tickets and you're worried about getting raked across the coals because of how expensive those tickets might be? So you call up some friends and family to see if anybody's got anything. Well, this is exactly where Game Time comes in, because it's the best place to go to buy all of your last-minute tickets. Let me give you 3 key reasons. I love the fact that sometimes those tickets get even cheaper as you get closer to the event. Number 2, I love the transparency. All-in pricing, which you can opt into so that there are no surprise fees when you get to checkout, and you can see views from your seat before you even buy the tickets. And I love the zone deals too. You just pick the section and Game Time picks the best seats for you. Tons of deals for you, so you can take all the guesswork out of buying tickets by heading over to Game Time today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, family. The New Orleans Saints defense absolutely dominated the day. And they say always that offense gets a lot tougher when the field gets shorter. And that was certainly the case for this New Orleans Saints offense. And so there were a lot of defensive players shining, but I don't think any shined as bright as Quincy Riley. Quincy Riley getting the first interception of camp, but it wasn't just that. Tight, sticky coverage all throughout the day, operating in that second team offense. As we mentioned before, even though it was operating in second team defense, As we mentioned before, even though he was with the second team, he was still matched up with guys like Chris Olave, who is a first team guy. And of course, going up against quarterback Spencer Rattler, who is the player that has seen the most NFL starts amongst the New Orleans Saints quarterback room. And so when you look at Quincy Riley's performance throughout the day, the consistency of it, I think, is the thing that was most intriguing and certainly the most, I kind of want to say like confidence building. Like, Quincy Riley was in a tricky situation. He came into New Orleans and then immediately kind of had that procedure after the draft, didn't get to participate in drills during OTAs, and then really only got going during that second day of minicamp. The third day of minicamp was canceled. And so he kind of had to close the gap pretty quickly when it came to on-field time on task, as Drew Brees used to call it. But Riley was targeted the first time in second team drills and allowed a completion to Chris Olave, which is a completion to the quick, kind of a quick completion to the right side. It was good to see like Olave like dancing for some extra yards after that as well. But then after that, incomplete. The only other time that he was targeted, he was taking the football away. He wasn't targeted any other time outside of that. And so I think that's one of the things that stands out to me most is that it's not just the one interception. It's the fact that the ball doesn't really kind of go his way so far. And so I think that this is typical to the Quincy Riley experience. I mean, when you watch his tape, it's littered with him taking options away and running routes for wide receivers and really just being fundamentally sound and not letting receivers get away from him. And it's also littered with him taking the football away. Remember, this is the same guy that had the most interceptions of any cornerback in his draft class going into the 2025 NFL draft with 15. He also had 54 passes defended as well throughout his time, both at Middle Tennessee and at Louisville. And so this is a player that is all about the ball hawk mentality, going to go and make plays on the ball, going to go and take the football away. Think about that. That compared with the recent signing of Julian Blackmon, the safety, who is a veteran safety, comes in after 5 years with the Indianapolis Colts, 10 career interceptions, but 7 of them being in the last 2 seasons. Jonas Sanker being somebody that has been able to produce takeaways as well. Think about, some of these corners and the way that Justin Reed too, and going after him, forcing completion percentages, making plays on the ball, all these other metrics and statistics that we can sit there and say to look smart. But really, here's the thing. They typically do a good job of catching footballs or making sure that receivers don't. And that's something that the Saints defense absolutely needs. We go off all the time about the Saints defense being one that struggled up against a run last year. They were 31st against the run. And trust me, they deserve every bit of that criticism, but they weren't super strong against the pass either. Like I always bring up, they took the ball away 3 times in the last 8 or 9 games of the season, and they were also 27th in passing yards. Like there's improvement to be made there. And so when you see a performance for a rookie that's effectively on the field for the 3rd time this offseason, second day of minicamp, first day of training camp, second day of training camp, and now here he is getting the first interception, not getting targeted a ton, all that, like it feels like he'd be a guy you'd go after. Because of the fact that he's a rookie and because of the fact that he's kind of catching up in terms of on-field time, and that's not been the case. And so Quincy Riley continuing to kind of make the case, or let me not say continuing. Let me say it more appropriately. Let me say it more correctly than that. Is beginning now to make that case for first-team reps and, of course, that competition with Ike Adam, who would be otherwise the absolutely understandable and legitimate default across from Kool-Aid McKinstry when it comes to cornerback. So great stuff from from Quincy Riley throughout training camp so far and showing up on this second day of practice to take the football away. Now, here's the thing that's always the question when it comes to training camp. And it's something I'm going to be really diligent about over the course of this year's training camp, because we kind of saw this last year as well. Is the defense performing well, or is the offense struggling? And I will say it was a sloppy practice today. It was not the prettiest practice on Thursday. It was one that included at one point 3 false starts over the course of 4 plays. It was one that included passes being thrown away, a lot of second action opportunities, things like that. But that's kind of where things kind of are expected to be in the first 2 days of training camp, with at most a 6-game starter being your most experienced quarterback and all those other things. Like, I'm not expecting the Saints to look pretty right now. I'm just expecting the game to get prettier. And if the game doesn't get prettier, then there's going to be a problem by the time the team gets into the regular season. But for right now, there's no reason to project that. I'm just going to wait and see what happens. And so while, yeah, the offense was struggling, I think that there were things individually that the defense did that are good things. Quincy Riley's play was absolutely one of them. We saw edge rushers like Chase Young consistently getting into the backfield again. At one point, he actually tipped a pass that was still caught by Moliki Mataval from Spencer Rattler on a pressure. We saw Chris Rumph again. He's flashed a couple of times now over the course of the last 2 days. I'd say probably 3 times that I've really put an asterisk next to his number because of the way that he's performed. So we've seen a good bit of all that. We saw Demario Davis fit the run extremely well, do what it is that he does. So Bryan Bresee make a really good play on a run play as well. And that's kind of been the criticism around Bryan Bresee, is that he's not always been the strongest run defender. He's been a stronger pass rusher and all those other pieces. So I think that there are things that you can see over on the defensive side. I don't think that it's worth getting super hype about just yet or anything like that. It's 2 days into training camp. But I do think that there are things individually that these players have done, and that system-wide this team has done well. Like I mentioned after the first day of training camp, 3 or 4 players making the same call, same adjustment, seeing the same thing at the exact same time, all that. That's good. That's really, really good. That's good cohesion and understanding amongst your third team defense in that case. On Thursday, we saw moments to where the play flow and the way that the gaps were fitted in the run game was really, really strong. Even though early on in practice, you had a big run by Alvin Kamara that probably would have been a big run even in a full contact situation. You saw them that sort of those things get tighter, the rhythm amongst the defense get better, like all those other things. And so I think all of that's important. I don't think that any of it is worth starting to write about how fantastic this defense is going to be just yet and everything like that. We got to see it all full speed, got to see it all full contact, got to see how it manages attrition and all those other things. But I do think that if you're looking for something to put a star next to for day 2 of training camp, the New Orleans Saints defense absolutely deserves that star, and Quincy Riley deserves a second one. Coming up next, Kellen Moore gets a lot of stuff done in a little bit of time, and it's really impressive. Let's break it down as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back, and there's no place I'd rather be than Yahoo Fantasy. It's what we're all doing. We're all playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or you're a veteran making your millionth league. You're going to be able to find everything you need, from a great user interface to a fantastic mobile app. Both, you got the opportunity to manage your rosters and draft and all that on browser. You can do it all on your phone as well. And of course, the message boards. You know what? To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. And it all begins August 4th. So stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League by heading to yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. We're hearing a lot of conversation about the efficiency of Kellen Moore's practices, and it's starting to become really, really clear just how much Kellen Moore gets done over the course of a day's worth of practices. And keep in mind, the first 2 days are the shortest days that the Saints will have, about an hour 20, an hour 15 minutes. Then things start to go towards an hour and a half and even longer after that. And so keep that in mind as we discuss this. The Saints have given their team, whether it's team drills or 7-on-7 drills, so full team drills being 11-on-11. So 11-on-11 or 7-on-7 drills. they've given their team 82 reps over the course of the first 2 days of practice. Now, I wanted to compare that to last year, but what I had last year were the number of throwing attempts, right? So the throwing attempts aren't far off. The Saints' 3 quarterbacks right now have thrown 47 total passes here throughout training camp's first 2 days. Last year it was 41. But it was a slow start last year, where at the time, Derek Carr, Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, and remember this, Nathan Peterman, threw a combined 12 passes over the course of the first day of training camp. Keep that in mind, 12 passes. During the first day of training camp on Wednesday this year, Kellen Moore had these quarterbacks throwing 21 total passes across the 3 of them. In fact, Tyler Shough and Jake Haener on Wednesday combined for 12. So the 2 of them threw as many total passes as the Saints' entire quarterback room threw 1 year before, year over year, when it comes to the first day of training camp. The next piece to that is how often these players have been able to operate in these full team drills. So typically you'll see kind of these periods split up in different ways. So the Saints will come out, they'll do some position work, position drills, then they'll bring some stuff together. And they've been doing some interesting things. They've been having offensive players do tackling drills, and not just the special teamers, but from Kellen Moore's perspective, like, hey, you're going to turn the ball over. You better be ready to tackle. Similarly, on the defensive side, some of those players get to do some ball carrying drills as well, because Kellen Moore says, hey, eventually this defense is going to take the football away. And so they better know what to do with the ball in their hands. And so you're seeing a little bit of those types of things. But then also like going into some special teams drills, special teams work, things like that. Then they've been coming back together, doing full team drills. Then they go away for special teams, typically field goals over the course of the first 2 days. And then they come back and do some 7-on-7s. Then they go back to punts. And then they've been coming back and doing 2 straight sort of reps, basically, or series, if you will, of team drills again. And sometimes, like the first day, these drills were a little bit more geared towards kind of short yardage, working in different areas of the field, no real down and distance and stuff like that. But then the second day, you got to drive starters early, and then you got into red zone drills. So everything has a purpose, a reason, a why, as a lot of the players like to call it. And so I think that what that does is that it really kind of hones in focus on each individual piece of what's happening early on here in training camp, which is install, right? Like the Saints you don't finish all of your install stuff during OTAs and minicamp. You're still working on that throughout training camp. You're putting in, as Jake Haener actually laid it out, you're doing things like base downs and red zone and third down looks and all these other pieces, right? All these different things, your hurry ups, blah, blah, blah. And as you're working through all of that, you're putting in all those pieces. That creates the offense. And then you tailor make things from there based on the quarterback that's going to be your starter by saying, this quarterback's really good at this thing. Let's do more of that and stuff like that. Jake Haener did a really good job of kind of breaking all of that down. Wrote a great story about it. Well, I can't say it's great. You'll have to tell me if it's great. I don't know. But I wrote what I think is a great story of it about it over at louisianasports.net. So you can go check that out if you want to. But a real in-depth kind of look at like what the operation actually looks like. And so I think the thing that's super interesting about this, though, is that even though they're doing a lot, they've been maintaining. Now, again, I mentioned we saw the offensive line start to fall apart at 1.3 2 consecutive false start penalties, and then 3 of them within four reps between the second and third teams. And so I think maybe you saw a little bit of fatigue set in there. You saw a fight break out at one point with Brandon Cooks and Rajon Wright going at it, and Alontae Taylor and others jumping into it. Eventually, the entire defense was involved, it felt like, and then it got quickly diffused from there. Nothing too big. It lasted seconds. Not a big deal. But so I think maybe you saw a little bit of the fatigue. Maybe fatigue leads to those moments or something like that. But honestly, I think it's good. You're trying to get as many reps as you can throughout training camp. Practices, thanks to the CBA, the NFL, the NFLPA, just get shorter and shorter and shorter, it feels like. And so then there's less and less and less you can do with every negotiation. And so trying to maximize this stuff as much as you can, I think is great. And so we're seeing a lot of that come from Kellen Moore here. And so I wanted to mention that because this team needs work and they're getting it under head coach Kellen Moore. They're doing a lot more than we saw them do under Dennis Allen. All right, let's take a look at a couple of other things that I want to highlight. Devin Neal still had some first team reps with the running backs, but Kendre Miller now involved with those first team reps. We saw some late work for Marcus Yarns as well with the third team. So good to see him there. Trayton Welsh was the tight end that moved up into first team reps. But then we also saw Michael Jacobson move from third to second team reps. And Michael Jacobson to me was a standout the first day. Didn't have as many opportunities his second day, but really curious to see how that trajectory continues for both of those spots, right? You need a running back that's going to step up behind Alvin Kamara, and you're going to need to figure out your tight end room, at least for right now, with so many players no longer available, with Dallin Holker having retired. And then you have your two tight ends in Foster Morrow as well as Taysom Hill that are starting on the physically unable to perform list here during training camp. So lots of opportunities available for those tight ends. We'll see where things continue to go from there. Field goal kicking, I should say. Blake Grupe was 5 of 5 his first day. Charlie Smith had a rough day. Charlie Smith went out there on Thursday, kicked 5 kicks, and the last 3 of them in succession, he missed, or in a row. That's a way to say that, Ross. In a row. You don't have to be, got to be like that. All in a row, ended up being missed. 1 from 40, 1 from 47, 1 from 49. And so that's going to be one of those things, right? This was the big thing around Charlie Smith at the very beginning of his time here in New Orleans last year, was got a great leg and can boot him from 60 yards. But remember, only 15 field goal attempts happened last year from 60 yards or more. The majority of what happens in this league is between kind of 20 to 50 yards. And so you got to be able to hit those. So a little bit of a struggling day from there, but can't wait to see how he ends up rebounding from that. Officials still a part of practice and a ton more going on. So good stuff from the New Orleans Saints in their second day. Looking forward to seeing where they go in their third day. So we'll have everything ready for you live later on today, breaking all of that down. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Rush Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Learn how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.